What's up, everybody, and how you doing today? Well, today's video is going to be along the lines of my usual subject matter. I guess by saying that I pretty much open it up to anything, don't I? I wanted to talk about vice, and not necessarily vice, but rather our shortcomings and the hurdles in life that we have to overcome to become better people. And we could argue semantics about what better means, or we could discuss how each different person has their own perceptions of what being better is. And this isn't really about that. It's not about the specifics of what it means to be a better person, but rather you in your own personal life, you have your own hurdles that you need to overcome to be who you want to be. And I'm making an assumption by saying you, as if every one of you out there watching this right now have something in your life that you'd like to change. And sometimes this may be a big thing, such as you have a major aggression problem or severe addiction that's causing you lots of problems. The difficulty in overcoming those obstacles is great. However, once they're overcome, you become so much stronger for it. You become such a stronger person for the effort you put forward and gain from that. So every negative experience we have in our lives, there's something to gain from that through learning about us and our world. And this is the same with all stories and all people. So, to get over the, oh, I don't have a problem, or my life's just fine, let's just set that aside for a minute and make the assumption that every one of us is striving to better ourselves. And in that process, we're going to come across some of these big problems. And usually these big problems come when they either affect us strongly, or something that we do that affects others strongly. However, our empathy, for one reason or another, allows us to feel others' pain. And this is why humans will do selfless things that are very difficult to explain. And I know people will say altruism doesn't exist, that it's merely preservation of the species, or because we're programmed to feel empathy for others. But those who have felt a strong empathy towards other people can ask yourself, why do I feel so strongly about a person I've never met that doesn't affect me or my life at all? Why am I crying for a person that I don't even know? And this is at the root of the human experience. It's what sets us apart from animals that are living without conscious thought. However, it's also our downfall in many ways if we allow it to consume us through thinking that we have things figured out, thinking that we know what's best for other people. When every one of you knows that addictions that you may have, for example, when I talked about overcoming a large hurdle and how, let's say you conquer an addiction, and within no time you instantly start feeling like you're so much of a better person, and for a lot of folks that goes to their head, and then that would be the person who just quit smoking, who tells everybody else to quit smoking, or who conquered an addiction so their life battle is to fight that drug or substance, when the enemy is never an inanimate object. We can never fight drugs through fighting the drug. We have to fight the root cause of the pain and suffering, which is isolation from others, which cause us to have addictions. So, when a severe addiction or problem is overcome, we feel good about it. And we feel so good that often that keeps us from making that mistake again. Now, historically, we've seen many of these things, the downfalls, the follies of man, repeat over and over. And those become the stories, the archetypes, the allegories. Those become the myths. And the rest of it's just fodder. It comes and goes. We learn a little bit. We find out what we learned was wrong. But certain things just endure. And one of those is that conquering and that climbing of mountains in our life. Now I have my vape pen here. I started vaping about a year ago to quit smoking. I had somebody a while back say, hey, somebody who'd never met me, you know, a random comment on the YouTube video. I said, hey, have you considered vaping, quitting vaping? It's harmful for you and it's bad for your heart. So I thought about that, and I instantly got defensive, and I asked myself, why am I getting defensive? Well, because I know I have an addiction. However, my justification is that I just overcame 25 years of smoking cigarettes, and that's a tough one to break. However, this diminished danger of vaping does make it easier to justify. And this is how our lives are. We compare where we're at to where we were, rather than where maybe we should be or we want to be. I know that this is a security blanket for me, and so is my coffee. It wakes me up, you know. But when you have several different, let's just say, little things in your life that bother you, it's much more difficult to overcome. And that's really kind of the point I wanted to make here, which was that, well, you can overcome a major hurdle because it's in your way. Sometimes the smaller hurdles are more like just rocks you need to step over on a daily basis. Let's just say one thing that you do daily that you know you could do better at, but it doesn't affect you too much most of the time. And this could be a health issue that we neglect merely because we don't feel pain immediately, such as, you know, you have a bad tooth and you need to get it fixed, but you wait until it's killing you. That's been my case in a lot of teeth issues like that. But it's a small glimpse or a metaphor for the larger picture of the things that I ignore, that I could do. And so for me, growing is embracing all these things that I need to change and becoming better for it. So if you have things in your personal life that you need to work on, and you're willing to admit that, then the next step is to stop beating yourself up. This becomes an issue, and this is why people often hide or shy away from change, is because they're afraid of admitting that what they did in the past was wrong. But continuing the mistake doesn't make it any better. If you get halfway through writing a book and you find out that the subject matter or the facts have been changed, you might as well just put the book away. There's no point in finishing it. Don't just finish it for the sake of you put in so much effort. And that's kind of what happens in marriage. Sometimes people are together and they just fight constantly. And they do it because it's easier to stay together than it is to deal with discussing divorce or breaking up or, there's so much to life that we ignore. And I have a timer going off in the house, so I have to go turn it off because it's driving me nuts. So some of these addictions that we want to overcome, or some of these mistakes that we made, and I use addiction because addiction is an easy one. I've had several different addictions over the years. And so, in my perspective, sitting with my vape pen is not a big deal. It's just something that keeps me satisfied, I guess. But I also know in my mind that one day I'd like to conquer every addiction. And let me give you an idea of what I mean by an addiction, because there are varying degrees of addictive behavior. A person could easily call me an addict. I smoke cannabis, I vape, I drink coffee, and I take kratom. And those are my four main things, and every day I consume all of those. So how do you really know if you have an addiction, or if your addiction's harmful, or not helpful, or whether the risks outweigh the benefits? And one interesting thing I've noticed is when I go camping, and this could be on vacation, camping, anywhere you go where you're leaving town for a period of days. Camping's a good example because there's not a lot of access to, there's no access to anything in there, so what you bring is what you bring. So if you go camping, or you go out to the woods, or to the lake, what do you have to bring with you? Do you always have to bring cannabis? Do you always have to bring tobacco? Do you always have to bring alcohol? Whatever it may be. And for me, of course, yes, I have certain things that I always take with me. But I could say it's just part of who I am. but I also know that who I am right now is constantly changing, and we're all that way. It's taken me many years to say, okay, I cannot say anything for sure about the future. I just turned 40 years old, and it took me that long to admit that there's nothing that I can say with certainty about the future except for that I will die, and the world will go on. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean, like they say, the only things for sure in this life are death and taxes. Well, not even taxes are for sure. It's always, the fact that you're going to perish, and so in this time, we make the most of it. And since you don't know anything for sure, you can't make an assumption about what you're going to believe in the future. For example, a decade ago, I mean, not even that long ago, I've told people I've had several people try to talk me into Christianity. And I'll tell you, I'm a hard sell on any belief system. Trying to get me to believe something with all the variety of things that I've learned is ludicrous. I've cracked away that outer shell and revealed the golden Buddha within, if you will, and found my true self, so I can't negate that. You can't go back and cover that up and patch it up. So I've said, well, I'd never be a Christian. It just will never happen. And then I had to step back and say, well, even to be fair in my life, I have to give at least a 0.01% chance that Christianity may be correct. Just because if I negate it and leave it out, I'm already making an assumption about what's true and what's not. Whereas I can't prove it one way or another. However, I definitely can't say I will believe something or won't. Like, for example, a few years ago I was really into Eastern philosophy and mysticism, and I thought that they had something there, which they do. The different Buddhist practices in Hinduism are very mathematically oriented, and they understand that we're made up of energy and vibrations and all this. But as far as how far can you take that, you can only take it as far as what's written or what's been taught. And this is why we have to find our own path. And you have to blaze your own path, which means you take a little bit of everything you've learned and use it to know what not to fool yourself with, and then move forward from there, rather than trying to learn how to be or what to think. Because ultimately nobody can teach you what to think or how to overcome your own hurdles in life. And they're going to be different for each person. And I think once we realize that, and we start climbing that mountain, we'll meet a lot of other people along the way that are also taking a break on that same mountain and perhaps ascending a little further. So, take care, everybody, and have a wonderful day.